Take a look at this. This graph shows how many gallons of soda Americans drink annually. Unsurprisingly, we see this line steadily drop every year since 2004. But what is surprising is this. Coke Zero was launched around the same time as this decline started, and yet consumption of Coke Zero has experienced impressive growth since. As of Q3 2024, it occupies double the growth rate of Coca-Cola's entire product portfolio. The entire portfolio. How is it possible that in a market that's being abandoned by so many consumers, you can have a product that's growing this fast? To find out, I dug through a ton of financial disclosures from Coke, went deep into the archives of some 40-year-old ad campaigns, and tasted Coke Zero myself for the first time. Answering this question meant getting to the heart of what Coca-Cola was willing to lose, because to get this to work, they had to take a huge risk not long after the biggest flop in Coca-Cola's history. Okay, so I want to take you to the months leading up to the release of Coke Zero. In March 2005, the vice president of Coca-Cola's diet portfolio said, "Coca-Cola Zero is exactly what young adults told us they wanted. Real Coca-Cola taste, 0 calories, and a new brand they can call their own." Even before Coke Zero hit the market, Coke was already planting the seeds of 2 of its core pillars for its latest product. 0 calories, no compromise. Essentially telling consumers you can have your cake and eat it too. It'll taste just like the original Coke Classic. It's a bold claim.
The great refreshing taste you know and love. Now in Coca-Cola Zero.
Real Coke taste with 0 calories.
But before Coke even let Zero hit shelves, it created a huge problem for itself decades prior. Remember that whole zero compromise, just like classic Coke promise that's in every press release and ad? This wasn't the first time Coke tried to do something like that. Let's go back for just a moment to 1984. Coca-Cola is the #1 soft drink with a market share of 22%. If we go back just a little bit further in time, we see a problem. In 1948, Coke had a domestic market share of 60%. In 4 decades, it had lost nearly 40% market share. That's an issue. From being the soda for American troops in World War I and II, Coca-Cola was now one of many in a rapidly crowding market. And I wonder who the biggest contender was at the time. In 1985, Pepsi had roughly a 19% market share, not far behind Coca-Cola. Coke is seeing all of this. Market share shrinking, sales velocity slowing down, consumers starting to really like the taste of Pepsi. Coke has to do something.
Taxes and the picture of George Washington on the dollar bill, those are among the few constants in a changing world. But now another of those constants may be changing. Coca-Cola is about to announce what it calls the most significant development in its history.
For the first time in a century, Coca-Cola decided to reformulate and replace Coke Classic into New Coke. It completely eliminated the original product in favor of a new, better tasting formula. It would be an understatement to say this is a huge bet from Coke. Did it pay off? In a 1985 article from the Ledger Inquirer, several opinions show the sentiment at the time.
I prefer the old Coke. The new Coke tastes as though it has sat out and the taste is flat.
I do not care for the new Coke. It tastes like dead old Coke. I mourned after emptying my last bottle.
I do not like the new Coke. It tastes terrible and it makes my teeth sharp.
I think Millie had been part alligator, but the vibe is clear. People did not like New Coke. And you might think, that's hyperbolic or exaggerated. It's just a soft drink. What's the big deal? But in the United States, especially at the time, Coke was in many ways synonymous with America. So, unable to live up to the classic product, the original formula was returned to the market within just 79 days. In short, New Coke flopped hard. When you mess with the formula of basically America itself, you gotta be really careful. And this is where Coke Zero's product positioning, its central promise, gets really tricky. You would think with a complicated legacy like New Coke, Coca-Cola would steer completely clear of ever trying to do anything like that ever again. And to be clear, the intention behind New Coke was to completely replace Coke Classic. That's different from Coke Zero because Zero was never going to replace Coke Classic. It's an additional product. But Coke Zero's positioning was still so brazen. It was selling a very similar promise. I mean, that first TV commercial literally transformed a Coke Classic bottle into a Coke Zero bottle. You can't paint a bigger target on your product than that. But this time around, Coke kind of threaded the needle. This got me wondering though, has there been a time where a sequel product has outperformed the original? The Hustle put together an awesome resource of 7 products that were able to do just that, breaking down the strategies that made them so successful. If you're an entrepreneur, product marketer, or manager, you'll definitely want to check this out. Click the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. So from the start, Coke made sure that Coke Zero was everywhere, from Super Bowl 43 to NASCAR to even a campaign with the James Bond movie Skyfall. And it worked. In almost every earnings release from 2005 to 2017, Coke repeatedly talks about the continued success of Coke Zero, citing its sometimes reasonable and sometimes absurd sales unit volume and growth metrics. Yes, I still have my tree up in February. Take 2009, for example. While overall soda sales shrank by 2%, Coke Zero sales grew 20% from 97 million cases to 116 million. What's crazy is that I looked through all of these reports quarter by quarter, and seriously, Coke Zero almost never missed. Of course, there are other products in Coca-Cola's portfolio that are contributing to growth, but seriously, this is like the Michael Jordan of soft drinks, essentially carrying your entire franchise and giving you banger quarter after banger quarter. But this next move honestly baffled me. In 2017, Coke's senior VP of marketing, Stuart Kroenige, suggested something kinda nuts. She wanted to change the taste of Coke Zero. Seemingly unafraid of repeating history, Coke changed Coke Zero's recipe. The ingredients all remained the same, but the formulation of those ingredients is what changed, leading to an improved taste, according to Coca-Cola. Coke also updated its name from Coca-Cola Zero to Coca-Cola Zero Sugar and gave it a design uplift with a familiar red background. Personally, I'm still just gonna call it Coke Zero. But wait, shouldn't Coke Zero already be living up to the no compromise promise? Even beyond that, it's the fastest growing soda. Why mess with what's working? For me, this confusion was only reinforced with Coke's next move.
I need to try it first.
In 2021, Coke Zero Sugar rebranded and tweaked its recipe again. The trouble is, that's the second major rebrand in just 4 years, and it's making people feel a bit antsy. One Twitter user wrote, "You'd better have a backup plan if this is as screwed up as New Coke was." Again, there's New Coke. People remember trying to mess with perfection. Seeing a company change this many times in 4 years can either be a sign of great pioneering for some or waffling at the helm for others. Is Coke ruining something that's already perfect or trying to bring Coke Zero to its full potential? In a 2017 press release to investors, the company wrote, "We've used our in-house innovation capabilities to make the great taste of Coke Zero even better and a lot like Coke." Essentially, Coke felt that it still had room to improve flavor and deliver more fully on that zero compromise promise, and in its words, push the innovation envelope. I forgot my car doesn't make a cool startup sound, so you might have to add that in post. Oh yeah, classic right next to zero.
Well, please scan it now.
All right, I legit have not had a soda product in 10 years. So going in completely blind, took the labels off. I have no idea which is which. Probably shouldn't have just shaken it. Let's see how this goes. Okay. Oh, snap. Whoa, dude, those are basically the same. What the? So here's the thing. Many agreed that this, whichever Coke Zero is the closest thing to Coke Classic they had ever tasted.
We're gonna compare the new flavor of Coke Zero versus regular Cokes. It is very comparable to this. Wow!
The new Coke Zero definitely does taste more like real Coke.
They did make it better.
They did.
And the sales data bore that out. After the reformulation and rebrand, Coke Zero Sugar ended up contributing 25% of all of Coke's growth in Q3 2021. In fact, every year since this rebrand, Coke Zero has seen double-digit growth. Coke had figured it out. So as I kept returning to the original question I had after seeing these two graphs, how the whole industry is suffering but Coke Zero is blowing up, I think I get it now. And there are two things at play here. The first is, with Coke Zero, Coca-Cola wasn't trying to beat Pepsi or Dr. Pepper or any other competitor. It made a promise to its consumers, zero compromise on taste. And when it launched, it did really well, but that still wasn't enough. It required rethinking its recipe 2 more times to really get the product to soar. And maybe more importantly, Coke learned the right lesson from New Coke. In attempting to replace Coke Classic, New Coke flew way too close to the sun. It replaced the original product everyone loved, what many considered to be the beating heart of America. And that was the wrong move. Learning from that mistake, Coke Zero mimicked the classic product instead. Rather than taking something away, Coke let consumers have more of it. Coke Zero learned that you should never make your consumers have to say either or, but instead, both please. You'll notice that I haven't really mentioned anything about the most obvious likely contender in the zero soft drink space, Pepsi Zero. And the truth is, they're not much of a contender. Pepsi Zero currently has 1.2% of the carbonated soft drink market, while Coke Zero has 4%. When you're 4 times as large as your closest competitor, you've kind of got the game on lock. Why Pepsi Zero hasn't worked out is its own enormous topic, which I can totally cover if you want to hear that. Let me know in the comments below. But suffice to say, Coke Zero is squarely the king of this hill. And Coke is definitely treating Zero as the king, and now puts most of its ad spend towards Coke Zero as compared to any of its other soft drink products. That means it's getting more ad spend than Coke Classic itself. Sheesh. In 1995, Coke CEO Robert Goizueta said the formulation of New Coke was a prime example of taking intelligent risks.
We think it's the best risk we've ever taken, Gene.
Hard to disagree when a risk like that gets you to the best-selling soda in your portfolio. Don't forget to check out our custom report breaking down the 7 products that outshine their predecessors in the link below. And subscribe to the Hustle YouTube channel for more stories like this.